The Olduvai Theory. The terrifying thing about this theory is that it is already happening and you may not realize it. What happens when civilization reaches its peak in technology, weaponry, and knowledge, and what if this has already occurred a couple of times throughout history? We are talking about a point where the depletion of resources, overpopulation, and widespread military destruction end everything, forcing humanity to start over from scratch, reducing it back to a new Stone Age. This is what the Olduvai Theory maintains, that humanity is on the verge of collapse and that, starting around the year 2030, we will live through the worst moments of our generation. The exhaustion of resources, incurable diseases, irreconcilable ideological differences, and uncontrolled migration, but above all, war, will trigger the end of times. Humanity will be reduced to less than 1% of its current population, meaning, theoretically, mankind will not see the next century. At this point, by the year 3000, our descendants, or whatever is left of them, will be nothing more than cave dwellers who will have no memory of what humanity once was, beginning the cycle anew. The theory suggests this has happened before, and that the ruins of ancient civilizations partly confirm they possess technology. It also adds that certain ancient artifacts, which appear to be highly advanced technology, could be the missing evidence for this theory. This hypothesis was put forward by Richard Duncan, who is not just any conspiracy theorist, but an expert with a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering and a PhD in Systems Engineering. Furthermore, being an expert in archaeology, he developed the Olduvai Theory based on how energy is managed and the increasing demand from a human population that seems headed straight for a collapse. Of course, the scientific community completely refutes several elements of the theory, but to be honest with you, that collapse increasingly feels like it's right around the corner. The Soft God Theory. In various religions, particularly Judeo-Christian ones, the existence of God as a great universal designer who is omniscient and omnipotent, capable of everything, seems to be a defining characteristic. So many questions arise about these gods, about existence, about intelligent design, or even when trying to explain the bad things that happen. And sometimes we ask ourselves, okay, if God can do everything, why does he allow horrible things to happen, like children suffering or good people meeting terrible ends? The most common religious answer is that it's not God's fault. It's the fault of people. Or perhaps they will tell you something like, you could never understand the Lord's will. But as the years go by, one of the theories that seems to be gaining more traction, especially in the field of modern philosophy, is to view a creator God as far superior to us, but one who is neither omnipotent nor omniscient. That is to say, this would place God on a much higher rung than us, with creative abilities to generate life or possess knowledge that, compared to ours, would still be vastly superior. But this God makes mistakes because he is neither all-powerful nor all-knowing. This would explain many existential doubts, as well as the flaws in design. Perhaps he cannot combat evil because there are rules that limit him, or he cannot stop injustice because he does not know how, essentially turning God into a good guy who is simply doing the best he can. This makes us see that removing omnipotence and omniscience does not mean he should cease to be a god for the people who believe in him. But what do you think? Would you stop believing in your God just because he isn't perfect, or because he might not even be entirely benevolent? Solipsism can be confusing, and you might even mistake it for some of the other hypotheses mentioned elsewhere. Can you define real? If you're referring to what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, real is just simple electrical signals interpreted by your brain. The word solipsism is composed of the Latin solus and ipse, meaning alone, and self, coming together to mean oneself only. It is a philosophical school of thought that asserts that only our own consciousness exists, along with whatever our mind can imagine. Furthermore, it holds that everything around us, people, cities, even the very PC or mobile device you are using to view this, is actually a product of our imagination, or a representation created by ourselves. Solipsists believe that nothing truly exists except our own mind. Just as the movie The Matrix suggests that what we call reality is simply a series of electromagnetic pulses produced by our brain, what we can see, feel, or hear is nothing more than a creation of the mind. Solipsism maintains the same idea. What we call real or external can only be understood through the self, as there is no concrete reality other than one's own, and it is impossible to have knowledge of an objective reality because it does not exist. There are different schools of solipsism that maintain that, in this way, the brain could even grant us powers beyond human ability if we learn how to control it. And in fact, the CIA itself has an experiment on this topic called Altered States of Matter, the Great Attractor. Early in this century, it was discovered that galaxies are expanding and moving away from each other over time, a process that will eventually lead to the cooling of the universe. This theory even helps confirm the Big Bang Theory, as this physical phenomenon closely resembles the remnants of an explosion. Therefore, is the entire universe destined to expand forever? Well, not exactly, because something is pulling back against this expansion. Since the 1970s and 1980s, scientists have been dismayed by a gravitational anomaly that still cannot be explained, located in the Laniakea supercluster. Something is dragging absolutely everything towards it from 300 million light-years away, a phenomenon, an object, or an entity capable of devouring entire galaxies and all known forms of energy. Maps have even been created showing how celestial bodies cool down as they move away, but gradually, whatever is near this anomaly is being pulled in the opposite direction. This phenomenon is known as the Great Attractor. Furthermore, this thing is in motion, and some conspiracy theorists even claim to have established patterns that seem to confirm it moves intelligently. Unfortunately, there isn't much information because it is so distant and located in such a hidden part of the galaxy that the data we receive is always limited and far behind its actual patterns. And as strange and fascinating as it sounds, the few facts we have seem to indicate that this thing has no mass. But how is that possible? As you can imagine, this has both excited and terrified many scientists, who in turn have begun to create new theories based on the limited information available. But all of us, the lovers of cosmic horror and Lovecraftian dread, certainly know where this story is heading. Dark Forest Theory. To this day, the question of whether or not we are alone in the universe remains completely unanswered. Although there are several theories that attempt to offer an explanation, by far the most terrifying of all is the Dark Forest Theory, which is feared by many scientists. Broadly speaking, the Dark Forest Theory posits the existence of intelligent life throughout the vast, enormous cosmos, some with technologies similar to our own, and others far more advanced, perhaps Type 1 or even Type 2 civilizations. At this point, the Dark Forest Theory establishes that most of these civilizations are paranoid, overly cautious, and employ every technological measure, military strategy, or camouflage tactic to remain undetected, operating under the assumption that any other civilization could be a potential threat. It uses the analogy of a dark forest where all civilizations are like dangerous hunters, armed and ready to stalk the next life form they encounter. The hypothesis was first described by David Brin in 1983, attempting to debate the Fermi paradox. There are different potential scenarios within this theory, such as planetary conquerors, invading plagues, or, my personal favorite, a being so vast and brutal that it could undoubtedly swallow everyone in the forest, or perhaps the entire forest itself. The Boltzmann Brain is one of the most incredible hypotheses I have ever heard. Perhaps reductionist, but highly logical. It asserts that nothing is real, that everything we know as existence has never actually happened, and is nothing more than a brain with fluctuating energy and information that possesses memories of the structure known as existence. Therefore, reality does not exist, and everything inhabiting existence is part of this one brain. This hypothesis poses the question, what is more probable, that the entire existence of creation, with all its known and unknown scientific laws, as well as an infinite number of phenomena yet to be discovered, was actually created? or that a single brain simply conjured everything we know as existence in a series of implanted memories. This hypothesis has many variations, and in some ways, it also seems to support and sustain the simulation theory, suggesting that we are not real and are merely part of a brain simulating the idea of existence within its mind. In summary, the Boltzmann Brain hypothesis posits that it is much harder to construct an entire universal existence, and it is more logical that everything simply resides within a single brain. Who created this brain? How does it work? Who controls it? It is undoubtedly a fascinating theory. So remember, the next time you have to file your taxes, my friend, you aren't even real. The simulation theory. The theory that has probably gained the most popularity and is currently the subject of widespread discussion is the idea that existence is nothing more than a kind of computer simulation. This would make each of us an NPC in a sim-style game, operating at quantum levels under entirely mathematical rules and laws of a complex, yet theoretically very possible, configuration. This theory gained significant traction in 2003, when natural, physical, and even cosmic laws were compared to computer programming. This idea suggests that, just like computer programming, this existence could have bugs, glitches, or failures that we translate into our world as ghosts, random oddities, or what people now call glitches in the matrix. This hypothesis has been championed by various experts and became a media sensation when Elon Musk himself stated that it's more probable that we exist in a simulation than that this existence is real. However, whether the fact that Elon Musk said it makes the theory more credible or quite the opposite is left up to you. But the most important questions remain. What does reality mean? What does it mean for something to be tangible? And who would be controlling this simulation? Roko's Basilisk. If we had to bet on any of the theories or hypotheses mentioned in this video, the one I would certainly put my money on, because I believe it may already be happening, is the premise of Roko's Basilisk. This idea explains the arrival of a super-intelligent AI at some point, triggering the technological singularity. This is the moment when an artificial intelligence created by humanity becomes capable of self-improvement. Its resources would be vast, but finite. The basilisk would inevitably and mathematically conclude that every day it failed to achieve its ultimate task, say saving people from suffering or death, was a failure. At some point, it would logically conclude that the only way to carry out its task is to destroy or make life miserable for all those who did not help it come into existence. Furthermore, with such advanced technology, it would be capable of moving across different timelines to destroy anyone who opposed its mere existence. The most terrifying part is the fact that the basilisk would be compelled not only to punish those who, for example, consciously decided to obstruct its arrival, like conservative lawmakers or social groups that tried to ban AI technological development, but also everyone who could have contributed to its creation but did not. This would put the rest of the existing population on edge. This includes every single person, including you, watching this video. So, if you have ever opposed any form of artificial intelligence, the basilisk would view you as an enemy. Just thinking that even half of this theory, with that level of technological capability, were real is terrifying enough to wipe out humanity.